Joe Theismann. On November 18, 1985, Washington quarterback Joe Theismann took a snap on Monday Night Football and tried to run a flea flicker against the New York Giants. The play never developed. Hall of Fame linebacker Lawrence Taylor came through the protection and pulled Theismann down. During the tackle, Theismann suffered compound fractures of both the tibia and fibula in his right leg. Taylor immediately jumped up and frantically waved for medical help. That reaction told everyone the situation was serious before most players even understood what had happened. Theismann was 36, but he was still Washington's starting quarterback. He had won a Super Bowl, earned league MVP honors in 1983, and entered that night expecting to finish another normal game. Instead, that snap became the last of his career. Doctors repaired the leg, but the bones did not heal well enough for him to return. Theismann spent months attempting a comeback before accepting that his playing days were over. It remains one of the NFL's most remembered injuries because millions watched it happen live. 1 second he was running in a fence, the next his career had a final frame. Bo Jackson. Bo Jackson's final NFL play didn't look nearly as devastating. In the 1990 season's divisional playoff round, Jackson broke into the open field against the Cincinnati Bengals. A defender caught him from behind and dragged him down near the sideline. There was no enormous collision. Jackson even walked away from the field. So how did that tackle end the career of one of the most explosive athletes American sports had ever seen? Jackson had dislocated his left hip. The injury damaged blood vessels supplying the head of his femur. That eventually contributed to avascular necrosis, a condition in which bone tissue deteriorates because it is not receiving enough blood. It was like damaging a building's plumbing while leaving the outside walls standing. From a distance, everything could look normal while the structure inside was failing. Jackson underwent hip replacement surgery. Remarkably, he returned to Major League Baseball, but he never played another NFL down. He had completed only 4 NFL seasons, splitting his time between football and baseball, yet he had already produced moments that looked physically impossible. His last football carry proved something unsettling. An injury doesn't have to look catastrophic to cause catastrophic damage. Sterling Sharpe. Sterling Sharpe didn't slowly decline. He finished the 1994 season leading the NFL with 18 touchdown catches. Then, at age 29, he was done. Sharpe had suffered a neck injury late in the season. He still played in Green Bay's final game, catching 3 touchdowns against Tampa Bay, but further medical evaluation showed that continuing his career was too dangerous. The timing felt especially cruel. Sharpe wasn't hanging around as a fading veteran. He had just completed one of his best seasons. Across only 7 years, he made 5 Pro Bowls, earned 3 first-team All-Pro selections, and led the league in receptions 3 times. In 1992, he became the first player to lead the NFL in receptions, receiving yards, and receiving touchdowns in the same season since the league merger. For years, the short career complicated his Hall of Fame case. But his peak was finally recognized when he joined the Pro Football Hall of Fame's class of 2025. Sharpe's story is a reminder that a career can be complete without being long. The neck injury stole his next chapter, but it couldn't erase the pages he had already written. Dennis Pitta. Dramatic tone. Dennis Pitta's career became a loop that no player wants to live through. Injury, surgery, rehabilitation, return, and then the same injury again. The Baltimore Ravens tight end first dislocated and fractured his hip during training camp in 2013. He returned later that season, only to dislocate the hip again in September 2014. Doctors eventually cleared him, and after missing the entire 2015 season, Pitta completed an extraordinary comeback in 2016. He played all 16 games and led NFL tight ends with 86 receptions. Quietly. At that point, it looked like perseverance had finally won. Then came a non-contact practice during organized team activities in June 2017. Pitta stretched for a catch, fell, and couldn't put weight on his leg. He had dislocated the same hip a third time, quietly. No defender was responsible. There wasn't even a dramatic hit, just an ordinary practice rep and a joint that could no longer tolerate another injury. Sadly, the Ravens released him 5 days later, and he never played again.
Joe Thomas. Offensive linemen perform hundreds of movements that most viewers barely notice. Joe Thomas performed 10,363 consecutive offensive snaps without missing one. For more than 10 seasons, the Cleveland Browns left tackle was always there. Different quarterbacks, different coaches, different offensive systems, same man protecting the edge. Then, against Tennessee on October 22, 2017, Thomas tore his left triceps while blocking on a running play. At first, the moment looked almost too ordinary to matter. There was no massive pileup. Thomas simply released his opponent and held his arm as the play continued. But for the first time in his NFL career, Cleveland's offense lined up without him. The injury ended a streak widely regarded as an NFL record. It also became the final play of his career. Thomas retired in March 2018 after 167 starts, 10 consecutive Pro Bowl selections, and 6 first-team All-Pro honors. 10,000 snaps can make a player look indestructible. The next one can remind you that nobody is. If you're enjoying these stories, leave a like. It helps more NFL history find its way to you. Charles Bentley. Remember the player whose injury wasn't the most dangerous part? That was Charles Bentley. Bentley was a 2-time Pro Bowl center who grew up in Cleveland and signed with the Browns in 2006. He was supposed to become the foundation of their offensive line. During his first training camp with the team, Bentley tore his patellar tendon in his left knee. It was a serious injury, but one athletes can recover from. Then the story changed. After surgery, Bentley developed a severe staph infection in the knee. According to his account, the infection destroyed tissue, forced additional procedures, and kept him hospitalized for 72 days. Imagine preparing all year for defensive linemen only to face your most dangerous opponent after the operation was already over. Bentley fought his way back far enough to pass a team physical in 2008, but he requested his release and never played another NFL game. His Browns career ended with 0 regular season snaps. The torn tendon stopped him from playing. The infection nearly took much more. Alex Smith. Alex Smith suffered his injury exactly 33 years after Theismann and while playing quarterback for the same franchise. On November 18, 2018, Smith was sacked against the Houston Texans. The tackle fractured the tibia and fibula in his right leg. That alone could have ended his career. But days after surgery, Smith developed a serious bacterial infection and sepsis. His medical team was no longer planning a football comeback. They were fighting to save his life and avoid amputating the leg. Smith underwent 17 surgeries over 9 months. He wore an external fixator, a metal frame designed to stabilize the injured leg, and had to rebuild basic movements long before he could think about reading a defense again. Returning to ordinary life would have been a victory. Smith returned to the NFL. In October 2020, nearly 2 years after the injury, he entered a game against the Los Angeles Rams. He was sacked 6 times, which sounds like the universe performing an extremely unnecessary stress test, but he kept getting up. Smith later started 6 games, helped Washington win the NFC East, and was named the AP Comeback Player of the Year. His story didn't turn a terrible injury into something good. It showed how much could still be built after almost everything had been taken away. Shazier.
Ryan Shazier was 27 years old and already a two-time Pro Bowl linebacker when one tackle changed his life. During Pittsburgh's game at Cincinnati on December 4, 2017, Shazier lowered his head while attempting a tackle. He immediately reached toward his lower back and was unable to move his legs. He had suffered a spinal contusion and underwent spinal stabilization surgery 3 days later. The question was no longer when he would return to football, it was whether he would walk independently again. Months later, Shazier walked onto the stage at the 2018 NFL Draft with assistants to announce Pittsburgh's first-round selection. The moment lasted only a few seconds, but it represented hundreds of hours of rehabilitation. He continued training and initially held on to the possibility of playing again. The Steelers kept him connected to the organization, but he never returned to an NFL game. In September 2020, Shazier officially announced his retirement. His final play took away the career he expected. It did not take away his ability to move forward. These injuries weren't all dramatic in the same way. Some ended careers immediately. Others hid their worst consequences inside a hip, an infection, or the days following surgery. The NFL measures players in yards, touchdowns, tackles, and snaps. But sometimes the most important achievement begins after the statistics stop. Which comeback or career-ending injury should we cover next? Tell us in the comments and subscribe for more stories from NFL history.